To, at this time, introduce Dr. Grant Colfax to talk about the specifics and what that means in terms of what we need to do as a city. Dr. Colfax.
Thank you, Mayor Breed. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Mayor Breed, for your ongoing leadership during this pandemic. And I want to thank our partners at UCSF, especially Dr. Charles Chu and his team who worked so quickly to sequence this specimen. And I'd also like to thank our testing partner at Color, Dr. Scott Topper. Both are here today. And of course, my partner in our emergency response, Dr. Mary Ellen Carroll. All of us have been working furiously for the last 24 hours with our federal and state partners at CDC and at the State Department of Health to determine whether this is indeed the first case of Omicron that has been detected, and that has indeed been the result of our work overnight. I want to acknowledge our health officer, outstanding health officer, Dr. Susan Phillip, for her outstanding work. Her team worked really hard to ensure that we got this information as quickly as possible. But I also want to emphasize that this is not a surprise. For those of you who have been following this, we knew that Omicron was going to be here. We thought it was already here. We just hadn't detected it yet. So this is cause for concern, but it is also certainly not a cause for us to panic. We are prepared here in the city for this. With regard to the case itself, the person recently traveled to South Africa and developed symptoms upon their return, and they did the right thing and got tested and reported their travel history. They had received a full dose of the Moderna vaccine, but no booster. They had mild symptoms and thankfully have now recovered. Contacts have and are being notified by the health department. And again, here's what we know now. San Francisco is relatively well positioned to respond to variants. Our vaccine rate is high. More boosters are going into arms every day. 5 to 11-year-olds are getting vaccinated at a rapid uptake. Our masking and vaccine requirements are among some of the most stringent in the country. These efforts have been very effective in helping us slow the spread of the virus. And there's still a lot we do not know about Omicron. We don't know how infectious it is, although there is a strong likelihood that it is more infectious than Delta. We don't know how sick it will make people, but that is being studied furiously right now across the world. And we don't know yet how fully effective the vaccines are in protecting against transmission or serious cases of illness and hospitalizations due to Omicron. But most experts that I have spoken to believe that the vaccines will still be of critical importance in protecting ourselves, our families, and our community. So our message is the same as it was yesterday. To best protect against this variant, get vaccinated, for goodness sakes, if you have not been vaccinated. Get your booster if you're eligible. Continue to wear those masks inside where required. Continue to take the steps that we know that have been successful in San Francisco to prevent major loss of life and to slow the spread of this virus. We know how to do this in San Francisco. At this time, we do not anticipate changing any of our health orders or changing any current restrictions or imposing new restrictions on activity in San Francisco. We're obviously following these developments very closely. We will share additional information as we have it. And again, get vaccinated, get your booster, wear the mask, and for goodness sakes, it's been a long, almost 24 months now. Please have a great holiday season with your family. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Chu, our great partner in sequencing the virus, and again, whose team worked so hard over the night to make sure that we got this information as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My laboratory at University of California, San Francisco has been working very closely over the past year with the San Francisco Department of Public Health, the California Department of Public Health, and Color Genomics on genome surveillance of the virus. And by that, I mean that when we identify positive cases, COVID-19 cases in the city and county, we make an attempt to sequence all cases that we are able to identify. This particular sample was, I heard about it actually yesterday at about 3 p.m., and we were able to receive the sample in the laboratory by 8 p.m. We ran a very fast molecular test which looks for what we call spike gene dropout. What this test can tell you is it can tell you that you may have detected Omicron, but it's not conclusive. We were able to get the results of that test within 2 hours, showing that potentially this sample was an Omicron variant sample. But to confirm this finding, we needed to sequence the genome, the viral genome of this virus. And to do so, we used a pocket-sized sequencer called the nanopore sequencer. It's made by Oxford Nanopore Technologies. This is a sequencing technology in which we can go from detecting the virus to being able to assemble the entire genome within a few hours. So we were able to confirm the detection of Omicron within 5 hours, and we had most of the genome within 8 hours. 4 a.m. last night, we actually had assembled most of the genome. We were able to conclusively demonstrate that this was indeed an infection from the Omicron variant. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the overall message to the public is to get vaccinated because we know that we have a number of challenges that continue to persist with the COVID-19 virus, and what this means is we want to make sure that people get vaccinated. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Any questions?
www.diaryofafelon.com. Diaryofafelon.com. That's a $200 million lawsuit. Right there. For looking at my asshole following a 35-minute chokehold.
Are there any questions? Yes.
35-minute chokehold. And you're sitting for 35 minutes. 35-minute chokehold.
I'll let Dr. Colfax answer that question.
Pick up that summons.
I'm sorry, I heard about sequencing, but I didn't quite hear the details of the question. I'll try to answer what I take the character of the question to be, which is we're continuing to work with Color, with Dr. Chu's lab, with the state to sequence the samples. We work with a number of partners in doing that. So generally, we're sampling more in San Francisco, and it depends on the site. So with our partnership at UCSF and the Latino Task Force at the 24th and Cap site, all those samples are being sequenced, and then I'll turn to Color to have them answer what % of their samples are being sequenced. But I think the key thing is with the sequencing right now at the state level, the turnaround time is considerable. So that's why we really wanted to run this sample locally as quickly as possible. So as you know, across the nation and across the state and locally, we're continuing to ensure that we sequence specimens as quickly as possible. But again, I think the point is Omicron is here. We knew it was here. I don't want us to get overly focused on when's the next case coming, when's the next case going to be detected. We should all be acting as hopefully we were yesterday, which is that Omicron is here. We need to get those vaccines and boosters, get tested if you have symptoms or you know that you've been exposed, and continue to wear those masks. And I don't know if Color has more to add. Dr. Topper.
So Color Health provides most of the infrastructure that's used by the city of San Francisco and the state of California to execute their programs to defend against COVID. We work very closely with the COVID network as well as Dr. Chu's lab at UCSF to make residual samples available for sequencing. So almost 100% of the samples of the positive samples that are identified in San Francisco and in California are being routed for sequencing. My name is Scott Topper. I'm Vice President of Clinical Operations at Color.
Yeah, I'm going to let our health officer, Dr. Susan Phillip, answer that question. Dr. Phillip?
Thank you. And so I understood it was walking through the contact tracing. Is that right? For this particular individual. So I first want to point out that thank you very much to our lab partners, to Dr. Topper and Dr. Chu. We wouldn't have been able to do this without them. Also, very much thank you to the individual themselves. They recognized that they had recently traveled. They recognized that they had symptoms, and they did what we should all be doing, which is to go and get tested with symptoms. And then they reached out to SFDPH, to our team. We were able to speak with them. So with all investigations and contact tracing, we are talking to the individual, understanding, what their risk factors might have been, in this case, travel, and then speaking with them to make sure that they're staying home and isolated once they know that they have a positive test, which this person is doing, and then speaking to them about close contact. So that is the usual path that we follow. That is what we're doing in this case, and we're in the process of doing that with this individual now. The question was what kind of close contacts? Yeah, for privacy reasons, we are giving out limited information about the specifics of the individual, but we are in the process of finding out the people that may have been in close contact with them and reaching out to those individuals specifically. The general definition is of a close contact is someone who has been within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. That is the definition that has not yet changed. As we are learning more, as Dr. Colfax said, about Omicron, we will understand whether that definition has to change if this virus is more transmissible. And so that is generally what we ask people about. We most often will ask about other people residing in the home, because as with other viruses, it's really the length of time and the closeness of being with someone. So that is all in process now. The question now is people who have been traveling outside of the country, particularly in Southern Africa. Well, the travel policy and the reentry policy is governed at the national level. And so we know that there is a restriction on non-citizens traveling. We also understand from our CDC colleagues that additional steps and requirements will be coming into place. As of now, people are required to have a negative test within 72 hours of travel back. And we likely will be hearing more in the coming days with Omicron of additional steps that people will be asked to take pre and post travel.
How did they come up with the name Omicron? Why is it called Omicron? Because if you mix up the letters, it comes out moronic. Is this moronic there?
The question was about age. We're again not giving specific information. This was a previously healthy individual. Their symptoms were mild, and they did not have to be hospitalized.
Reunion, remembrance, and renewal in the National AIDS Memorial Grove.
By telling the stories, by sharing.
useful as a way to
Breaking news tied to the new COVID-19 variant. Omicron has now been discovered right here in the Bay Area, where the person traveled and the symptoms they felt. Plus, protecting downtown Walnut Creek, the vote just today by the City Council to address organized crime. Plus,
I don't understand how anyone could do to a community what has been done.
new information in the deadly high school shooting in the state of Michigan. What we're learning